Welcome. You're listening to the Leading Hope Podcast. My name is VJ Williams here with my friend and pastor Kevin Jack. Thank you for joining us, taking time out of your day to become a better leader. If you're new, we release a new episode every Wednesday. We actually are recording on a Wednesday, so one came out today, which is exciting. But the easiest way to remember, hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform. Also share this with a friend on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram. And please rate and review on Apple Podcasts. A few extra minutes will help this get into the hands of all of our friends who are trying to lead every week, and it's so important that you do that so they can be part of this community. Visit leadinghope.online to get updates and find out more about the Leading Hope community. Today we start a brand new series. Your series you've titled 3D Leadership, which
3D.
I cannot wait for this. I think this is so cool.
Yeah, I'm excited.
And then this is episode 185, the title, Leading Down.
So, yeah, I was not prepared for that.
Leading down.
Can I acknowledge that your burn turned to tan on your face?
Yeah.
Yeah,
you
like your
that?
like fried
You know
face?
why? I was smart this time and used the aloe lotion. And every day, just
like the green stuff.
Yeah, no. It's
got
actual
the
lotion, but it's got the aloe in it.
Nice.
It's like a 50-50 blend.
Good.
There you go.
We'll put that in the show notes.
There you go.
We will not put that in the
we
show
will
notes.
not. That would be awful.
So, for this series, there's going to be a 3-week series, and I want to talk through that there are 3 distinct directions in leadership: up, down, and sideways. And what I want people to be able to see is that there's a massive difference between leading under someone who has authority, which is leading up, leading with authority, which is leading down, and leading where there is no authority present, which is really leading sideways. And what I found is that there's a lot of people who are good at one. Like, they know one direction of leadership and they can handle that just because of like natural aptitude, personality, competence. So they're good at that one piece. But if you're only good at one, you still might end up getting fired. Can we acknowledge that?
Yeah.
Because you have to. If you're good at 2, you're good enough to do a job well.
Yep.
Like, that'll work. But I really believe that if you can be good at all 3 of these, not only will you excel in your leadership, but while there are distinct competencies and skills for each direction in leadership, they will benefit each other. And so if you find, hey, the better I get at leading up, the better I get at leading the person who I report to, I will actually also improve leading down in the areas in which I lead with authority. So
Good.
Today, leading down.
Down.
So this is leading with authority. You have a team, you have employees, you have people who report to you, and there are like just thousands of things taking place that we're not actually going to get into today. We're not going to get into one-on-ones and performance reviews and salary and benefits.
Not salary today?
No, not getting into
Doing that?
Not getting into any one of those.
Good decision.
And so I just want to get into like the key aspects of leading down, because, and we could maybe even in future podcast episodes, we'll see based upon response of like, hey, do we want to get into one-on-ones and how to do performance reviews? But I want to give you the key aspects of what you need to be focused on when you're leading with authority. And so just here's a simple statement, okay? You win when you have clarified priorities, communicated outcomes, and ensured a possible path for success, okay? You win when you are leading with authority, when you have clarified, this is what matters most, this is what should be at the top of our list that we're working on, when you have communicated the outcomes, and this is what that needs to lead to, and you have ensured a possible path for success. Now, I want to use that just kind of, this episode today, I need to give you bits and pieces of the structure of this. And then at the end, I'm going to get into what is really most important, but we can't jump there right away. We kind of have to piece some different pieces, some different aspects of this together. So first, I want to say, you make all of this easier by being someone who is easy to follow.
It's good.
And we could spend 1,000 episodes on that. We actually have spent some in the past on the followership dynamic. But just say, like, hey, being someone who is trustworthy, who has integrity, being someone who's focused, who's not scattered, who doesn't, like, every single time they have a conversation or go to a conference or hear a different talk, radically reorient the direction of the organization. Not being a jerk. Like, all of these things, you go, hey, this is so much easier when you are the type of person who is easier to follow.
Yeah.
And so I want to see just a couple key things. First, it is your role to direct the work. It is your role to determine the work that needs to get done. And if I give this idea here, there is a reason why you have authority. And some people, I feel like that's the aspect in this whole conversation that just gets completely passed by over everyone. Like, on a team, in an organization, there is someone who has authority. And we just assume that, okay, cool, now I have authority. Now I have power. Now I can do something with it. Well, why?
Yeah.
Why do we give certain people authority? Not influence, because influence is kind of earned.
Right.
Why do we assign and say, you have the authority to make these decisions and to determine these things? Well, the reason why you have authority is to insist and ensure that the individual efforts, the collective output is more than just the individual efforts, if that makes sense. To ensure that the sum of the whole is actually greater than all the individual parts put together. To say on a team, to say like, hey, if every single person just went off and did their work, it wouldn't necessarily contribute something significant. But if someone with authority can tie all these different pieces together, then all of a sudden we're actually working to something greater than any of us could individually. And I know that may seem like really intuitive and obvious.
Yeah.
But no one ever acknowledges it.
Right.
And to say, like, there is a reason why someone is given authority.
Yep.
That is the reason, to ensure that it contributes to something more significant. So, second piece, it is your role to ensure a possible path for success. Not just to say, like, hey, here's what so we say clarify priority, here's what matters, determine the outcome, this is what it needs to create, not just the activity that's important, the outcome, this is what we actually want to create, but to ensure, like, hey, there's an ability for us to get from where we are to where we want to be. And it may not be perfectly clear, and it may not be the most linear path, but it is your role to ensure that there is a possible path for success. Simple. Now, here's what I think is just like fascinating in the aspect of leading down, is that, and this is what I've written, leading down well requires you to be clear and authoritative about the priorities and outcomes while you are responsive and adaptive on helping those outcomes be met. Let me say it differently. You must be clear and bold about the work we are doing while you are adaptive and flexible about how we're going to get there.
Yeah.
Say it differently one more time. Tell your team where to go, then let your team tell you how you can help them get there. And V, what I have noticed over and over again is this just gets, I'm going to say it one more time to make sure it settles in for those who are driving.
I think it's good.
Tell your team where to go and let your team tell you how you can help them get there. And this is the dynamic that I see. And I'm not saying, like, I'll get into some more specifics on this, but I want to talk about this for just a second.
Great.
Is I continuously see leaders that when it comes to the time, so I'm not saying we abandon a collaborative approach on determining outcomes, okay? I'm not saying we shouldn't get in rooms with our teams and say, what do we think?
Right.
Where do we need to go? But the reality is at a certain point in time, the leader has to get up and say, this is where we're headed.
Yep.
That cannot be a group decision.
Right.
Like, the group has to buy in. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
So we do offsites 3-4 times a year. And we'll go, hey, what does everyone think? What one thing, if most significantly improved, make the greatest impact to our organization?
Yep.
And everybody will give their thoughts. And eventually there'll be a point in time where there's kind of a thought that's sticking out. They'll be like, oh, yeah, that. I still have to get up there.
Right.
And say, okay, it's this.
Yep.
Okay, this is what we're focused on.
Right.
And what I find is that I continuously see leaders flip this and they want the team to make the decision fully on where they're going, and they're unwilling to actually just spell it out, and then they dictate the process.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we are incredibly
reverse engineered.
We're incredibly fuzzy on the actual work that we need to do, and yet we're so rigid on, well, you need to meet with me this many times, and it's got to be like this, and it's not adaptive to the individual team members. It's really just structured by you.
That's good. I think that's good.
Cool. So if I could just kind of break down some of these pieces. So again, tell your team where to go. The failure of most leaders is to actually set the direction. This should be collaborative, but you still have to say it. You have to be the one who says, this is where we're headed. You also have to say it at the right time, if I could acknowledge that. Like, if you're in a meeting of collaboration and you get up at the very front end and go, this is where we're going. Like, well, there's no...
You just ruined the entire day. Like at the offsite, if you got up and you said, hey, we're getting ready to talk about everything that God is doing, and we're going to try to figure out what that next step is. Here's what it is.
Yep. It was go.
Thanks for inviting me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Glad my opinion doesn't matter at all.
Glad you, What's for dinner?
If you're not willing to, at some point in time, tell the team this is where to go, there's no need for you to actually have authority.
Right.
And if I can give some like real life examples, I've gotten involved with just kind of helping some different churches through vision process and stuff like that. And I'll especially bump into pastors, and pastors will just, and it's presented as humble. Like, I think that's what they think they're being in their head, is they're being humble. And they'll say things like, well, I just want to hear what the church wants to do. I just want to hear where the board wants to go. And I've literally sat in rooms where like a board member looks at the pastor and says, I think this is what matters, but we're waiting for you to lead. And the pastor responds with, well, I just want to hear what the board wants to do. I was like, did you not hear him? They said, we're waiting for you to lead. That's what they want you to do.
Yeah.
And so what happens is actually, like, in their desire to be humble, they actually become incredibly unhelpful in their work as a leader.
I thought you're just supposed to preach on Sunday.
That'd actually be really nice. It'd make life so much simpler.
It would make this podcast irrelevant.
This podcast irrelevant.
Just to be clear.
So you have to tell your team where to go, and then let your team tell you how you can help them get there. So while you should all be going in the same direction, you won't lead each person the same, because all of their gifting and all of their aptitudes are different. So you have to figure out what the individual needs in terms of touch points, feedback, development, and then you adapt to them to ensure their possible success. And I don't want you to fall in it when you're leading down. I don't want you to fall in the trap that most people are, in which we're really fuzzy, we're really soft about where we're going, and then we're really strict about how we manage and how we lead. And to say you should be the opposite. You should be incredibly clear on where we're going, and this is what matters most. And then be adaptive. Yeah. I'm not saying be soft, but I'm saying be adaptive for each team member and what they need. Now, I'm not saying you let each team member dictate your pace of one-on-ones and all these other things and check-in points. I'm saying you need to be responsive to how they want to be led, but then to lead them in the way that is most helpful for them.
It's good. I've got two things here that I want to just dive a little deeper into.
Cool.
You started this whole thing out, which is, I would say that from comments and things that I've read, most people that listen to the podcast have a team.
Yeah.
There's an employee, or they have a direct report of some sort, whatever
or
that looks like.
Volunteer base or
something that they are leading someone. And if they're not, they're leading themselves in general, and that's why they're listening to the podcast. So when we get to the actual thing, it is your role to direct the work. I think that's really important to say. And here's direct the work. For me, like, you make that really simple for me, because you say this is where we're going. Now, you're not, and then you enable me to ask questions to figure out how I need to do that. You don't know how, or you would have already came up with it.
It's exactly right.
And that's not a criticism to you.
Oh, no.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah. Yep.
And so everyone has to have that mentality when we're talking about it's your role to direct the work. Well, I know I'm supposed to direct the work, but what's that mean? Yeah. That's what that means.
Yep.
It means that he's already set the outcome that we're looking for. If he knew how, he would have already told me. So I just need to keep pulling on him piece by piece, card by card. We did this episode the other, Play with the Open Hand. I'm actually trying to help him open his hands by giving me enough information to do what I'm supposed to do when I direct the work. So if you have direct employees and you have someone that you're getting information from who's leading the organization, directing the work is that. Yep. It's that specifically, and I just think it's so important. Is there something missing there?
Oh, let me add to that, because I think that's a great point. Say, like, when I led at a smaller scale, and, like, let's say I led a team to host an event. Yeah. It's pretty easy for me to have all the details filled in. To go, I want registration to look like this. I want this to look like this. I want you guys to go execute it. As leadership scales and you gain responsibility, like, I don't have the ability to be that specific. No. Not because of time. A little because of time. Also because of ignorance. Yeah. And so here, I would say it like this. If you're unwilling to let so I have to be very specific on the bullseye long term. Yeah. Even though I don't know the steps along the way. Right. And to say, like, if you're unwilling to deal with that level of clarity and that level of ambiguity, you're not fit for leading. Yeah. Like, you need to lead at a smaller scale where someone tells you every last thing you're supposed to do. That's right. And I think what happens is sometimes people criticize their leader when there's a reason why they're in leadership. That's right. That's good. Just to continue with this real quick, directing work only happens well when you have, how do I want to say this? You, as a leader, my job is to help you learn how to ask questions to know how to direct well. Oh, that's good. And I'm not, if I'm not doing that, then I'm not actually helping them direct the work. So it's a two-way street. It's not just one side or the other. And here's the thing that I found, like, this is always funny in the office here. There's certain things that you want to have eyes on, and some things you could care less about because it's not that it's not of interest of you. It's that, to your point, it's not something that you would be able to help anyway. So one thing that I do, and I tell people, I was like, well, you're not going to help him help you if you don't ask the right questions. So I was like, if it's a look of something, or if it's something that needs to be presented visually, I'm like, don't just give him one option. Give him more than one option, because now you're actually asking questions through a different mechanism. Yep. And now he's going to respond with, oh, I like this one. And now you're 10 steps closer to where we want to go because you did this. So it's knowing that information. That's how you direct well, is knowing that information. Oh, that's great. So that's the last thing I wanted to ask you about. Is it's your role to ensure a possible path for success. What is some of the things that you employ with your direct reports or people in the organizations that you lead, in not even just in this sphere, maybe because when you're having coaching sessions or you're doing outside of this organization, what are you doing to ensure a possible path for success for the people that you're talking to? I usually just live on one question. Okay. And that is a sense of, what do you need from me for you to be able to do this? Yeah. And it's a question of my time, my skill, financial resources, maybe clearing other things out. But it's usually just focused on that. What do you need from me to ensure you're able to accomplish this? You are high responsibility for the individual to make the ask. Yeah. That's good. Is that something that you think? Now, if I could say what's different, though, is this is going to sound like in the spot that I'm in now, I get to lead with great leaders. Yeah. And so my level of oversight is way less than what it used to be, because I can trust. Gotcha. Like, I've got a high level of trust that if you don't know something, you're going to come ask. Otherwise, you've got the ability to carry it out. It wasn't the same 15 years ago. Yeah. I had to be far more involved and monitor progress and have those mechanisms in place. Yeah, and I think, and we just recently a local friend reached out about vision and such, and in that ensure a possible path to success is something that you have to spend lots of time. Yes. Right? Like, ensuring a path to success is a constant conversation. It never dies. Yep.
And I think that's so important because
that's good.
Consistency and endurance is something that's at a high stake when you're talking about these things. How do you want to end this? Leading down.
Yeah, so I want to reiterate the main idea on leading down. Tell your team where to go. Okay, that's not anti-collaboration, but tell your team where to go and let your team tell you how you can help them get there. So here's 2 application questions you can ask. First off, ask your team, do you know what we're trying to accomplish? And then if they don't answer how you want them to answer, don't be mad. Okay, that's your fault. Do you know what we're trying to accomplish? I don't really. Well, guess. I don't really know. You idiots. Okay, don't go down that right. Okay, and then ask your team, what do you need from me to help you succeed? And that may be time. It may be like development. It may be connecting them to someone. It may be clearing their path of some other priorities. But I believe if you ask those 2 questions, that's what it looks like to lead well down, to lead with authority.
Whew, I love the questions. Hey, let us know how those worked for you this week. I'd love to hear back. And I know some of you have been asking for, hey, can you guys help us with this questions to ask? So here they are every week, maybe, some weeks.
Maybe.
Some weeks.
Most weeks.
Most weeks. Well, I'll take that. Most weeks. We'll get it. Thank you for joining us today. If you're new to the podcast, haven't yet subscribed, it mean the world to us if you did that now. Also, post about it, rate and review, or both. You won't believe how that helps get this podcast in the hands of so many more leaders just like you. We love hearing your stories of how the podcast is working in our life and business. If you have a story, visit Leading Hope online and send that to us. We'd love to hear from you. And remember, everyone has 20 minutes to learn to become a better leader. Make it count.